Standing in front of 25 people at 9:15 on a Monday morning, watching Trevor Ashford slide an envelope across the conference table, I did something nobody expected. I smiled. Not because I was happy, because 8 months ago, I'd programmed this exact moment into the system that runs his entire company, and in about 3 hours, he was going to realize his mistake. My name is Carter Brennan. I'm 52 years old, and this is the story of how I brought down a $200 million company without writing a single new line of code. Let me back up. That Monday started normal enough. I was up at 5:30, made coffee in my Red Sox mug, the one with the faded 2004 World Series logo. My apartment in Southie was quiet. Been living alone since the divorce 3 years back, just me and the view of the harbor when the fog lifts. I checked my phone. Text from my son Brandon at BU. "Dad, you see the Pats trade?" Insane. Kid's 20 years old, computer science major, and he still texts me about football at 6 a.m. I typed back Belichick's lost it and headed to the shower. Got to the Apex Logistics office in Seaport by 7:30. Parked my 2015 F-150 in the usual spot, third level, northwest corner. Badge worked fine. Grabbed my laptop bag and headed up. 20 years I'd been coming through that lobby. 20 years of building the infrastructure that made Apex work. When I started in 2005, this company was a failing startup burning through investor money. Their systems were a disaster. Data leaking everywhere, servers crashing weekly, vendors threatening to pull out. They brought me in on contract to stabilize things. What I did was more than that. I built Sentinel. Sentinel wasn't flashy. No product launch, no press release. Just a smart relay system that sat between every critical transaction, validating data, rerouting failures, keeping everything running smooth. It lived in the background, invisible, perfect. The kind of infrastructure nobody notices until it stops working. The company recovered. Roland Ashford, the founder, made millions. We went from 30 employees to 400, from one office to 6 locations, and through it all, Sentinel held everything together. Here's what nobody knew. Sentinel didn't run on Apex's servers. When I built it, I saw too much chaos, people fighting for control, leadership changing every year, short-term thinking everywhere. So I made a decision. I spun up my own server cluster, registered under my personal LLC, and deployed Sentinel through that channel. Clean, separate, mine. Legally, I owned it. Technically, I controlled it. They used it every single day and never asked questions because it never failed. Then last year, Roland retired, handed the company over to his son Trevor. 38 years old, Harvard MBA, zero technical knowledge. The kind of guy who talks about disruption and digital transformation without understanding what either word actually means. I knew things were going to change. Trevor wanted to make his mark, bring in his own people, modernize everything. Translation: get rid of anyone who remembered how things actually worked. So 8 months ago, I added something to Sentinel's code, a contingency trigger. If my credentials were terminated without proper authorization, the system would begin a controlled shutdown. Not a crash, just a gradual freeze that would make everything stop working, slowly, until they figured out what they'd done. That Monday morning, I got pinged at 8:45. Carter, urgent executive meeting, conference room A. 9:15 sharp, no agenda, no context, just a summons. I grabbed my notes on the weekend system audit I'd finished and headed down. The conference room was on the 3rd floor, all glass walls and expensive furniture. When I walked in, I stopped. 25 people. Every director, every VP, half the senior management team. All sitting there, staring at me like I was about to get a performance review. Trevor sat at the head of the table in a suit that probably cost $3,000. His tie was perfect, his smile was sharper. I stayed standing, didn't sit down. "Carter," he said, folding his hands like he was hosting a press conference. "Let's keep this short. As of this moment, your role at Apex Logistics is being eliminated. Effective immediately." The room went silent. Not gasps, not murmurs, just dead air. I scanned the faces. Nicole Winters, sitting 3 seats down, wouldn't look at me. Nicole, who I'd trained for 18 months, who I'd saved when she screwed up a client data migration 3 years ago. I took the blame for that one. Stayed overnight fixing it while she went home. Now she was VP of Technology Integration, and she couldn't meet my eyes. Austin Pierce, Trevor's 28-year-old innovation director, was smiling. Kid had been here 2 months and thought he understood systems architecture because he'd read some articles on Medium. You'll find your severance package outlined here. Trevor slid the envelope toward me like we were finishing a business lunch. Security will escort you to collect your belongings. We'd appreciate it if you could be out by noon. I didn't touch the envelope, just looked at Trevor. That smug expression, like he'd just made a brilliant strategic move. Understood, I said. Then I turned and walked out. Didn't say goodbye, didn't argue, just left. The door closed behind me. 2 security guards were already waiting in the hallway. Young guys, probably felt awkward about the whole thing. Mr. Brennan, one of them said, we'll walk you to your office. They followed me down the hall. People at their desks suddenly became very interested in their computer screens. Nobody made eye contact. 20 years of working together, and now I was invisible. My office was on the 4th floor. Small, nothing fancy, but it had a window that looked out over the harbor. They stood at the door while I started packing. Laptop went in my bag, the Red Sox mug, couple of notebooks, the photo of Brandon at his high school graduation, wearing his Northeastern Acceptance t-shirt, smiling like he'd just won the lottery. Kid got a full ride for computer science. That was 2 years ago. Then I checked the bottom drawer of my desk. It stuck, like it always did. I pulled harder and something slid out from behind the panel, a yellow folder, thick, warped at the edges. I opened it. Inside were the original Sentinel blueprints, hand-drawn on engineering vellum back when I was first designing the system. Page after page of architecture diagrams, node structures, data flows, and in the corner of the first page, in my handwriting, C. Brennan, April 17th, 2016. I stared at that signature. My proof. The system they thought they owned, the infrastructure their entire company ran on, was mine. Designed by me, built by me, owned by me, and I had the documentation to prove it. I slid the folder into the bottom of the box, under the mug and the photo. Ready when you are, one of the guards said. We walked back through the office, past the desks where people I'd hired were suddenly fascinated by spreadsheets, past the conference rooms where I'd spent hundreds of hours fixing problems nobody else could solve, past Nicole's office. Her door was closed. The elevator ride down was silent. At the lobby, we headed toward the parking garage entrance. Your badge should still work for the garage, the guard said. I held my badge up to the reader. Beep, beep, beep. Red light. Access denied. The guard tried his override. Nothing. Sorry, Mr. Brennan, system's already locked you out. You'll have to exit through the front. So I walked. Out the main doors onto Seaport Boulevard, carrying 20 years of my life in a cardboard box. It was cold for April. Wind coming off the water, cutting right through my jacket. 10 blocks to where I'd parked my truck on a side street that morning. Had to move it before the meter ran out. People passed me on the sidewalk. Business people, tourists, college kids. Nobody gave a damn that I'd just been fired in front of 25 people. When I got to the F-150, I set the box on the passenger seat and climbed in. Started the engine, turned the heat on full blast. My phone buzzed. Sentinel notification. Status: inactive admin detected. Countdown initiated. 3 hours remaining. I sat there, engine idling, watching people walk by on the street. Everything looked normal. Just another Monday in Boston. But for Apex Logistics, nothing was ever going to be normal again. Trevor Ashford just fired the one person who actually understood how his company worked, and in 3 hours, he was going to start paying for it. I drove home to Southie in silence. No radio, no podcasts, just the sound of traffic and my own thoughts. Got to my apartment around noon. The place felt emptier than usual. I set the box on the kitchen table and opened my laptop. The Sentinel admin console loaded up, green cursor blinking. This interface only worked from 3 devices I'd registered years ago: my work laptop, my personal desktop, and my phone. Nobody else could access it. Nobody else even knew it existed. Phase 1 scheduled. Access layer disruption, 2 hours, 31 minutes remaining. The system was counting down. In about 2.5 hours, Apex would start feeling the first symptoms. Nothing dramatic, just small delays that would multiply into bigger problems. My phone buzzed. Brandon. Dad, saw something on LinkedIn about Apex restructuring. You okay? Someone had already posted about it. Probably one of the 25 people in that room, spinning the story about modernization and fresh direction. I texted back. I'm fine. Just a change. We'll talk later. 3 dots appeared. Then, you built that place. Their loss. 20 years old and he already got it. I'd raised him right. I made myself a sandwich but couldn't eat it. Poured 2 fingers of Maker's Mark instead. It was noon on a Monday and I was drinking bourbon, but I figured getting fired earned me that much. By 2 p.m. I opened the Sentinel logs. Just watching. Waiting. 2:17 p.m. Payroll API delay. System queued automatic retry. 2:23 p.m. Login loop detected. Regional Manager, EU West Division. Session timeout after 47 seconds. 2:29 p.m. Financial record desync. Quarterly report checksum mismatch. Small stuff. The kind of thing that makes AT people frown and restart services. But each problem was a thread pulling loose. And Sentinel was designed so that when one thread pulled, others followed. My phone rang at 3:15. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Nicole's voice. Carter, hi, it's Nicole. Listen, we're experiencing some unusual system behavior this afternoon. Nothing major, but some authentication loops and data validation errors. I was wondering if you had time to, maybe consult on a few things. Call me back when you get a chance. I deleted the message without finishing it. She ignored me in that conference room, sat there silent while Trevor fired me in front of 25 people. Now she wanted help fixing the problems she didn't even understand existed. That's not how this works. By Tuesday morning, things had escalated. I didn't need to check the logs to know. My phone had 11 missed calls from Apex numbers, 3 voicemails from Nicole, 2 from some director I'd never heard of, 1 from Austin Pierce. I listened to Austin's message while making coffee. Hey Carter, Austin Pierce here. Look, we've got some legacy system issues, probably just need someone familiar with the old architecture to take a look. Wondering if you could swing by this week. We'll compensate you for your time, obviously. Give me a call. Legacy system issues, old architecture. The kid had been there 2 months and thought he could patronize me. I deleted all the messages and checked the Sentinel logs instead. Email systems were breaking, threads splitting apart mid-conversation, calendar invites sending but never arriving. The CRM platform had stopped syncing entirely, which meant sales couldn't see their pipeline data. 3 major client accounts were showing order status errors. By Tuesday afternoon, Trevor called an emergency meeting. I know because Sentinel's monitoring interface caught everything. They'd uploaded a shared audit file to the conference system for transparency, and Sentinel could read every byte. Trevor's voice came through clearly on the recording. This is temporary. We've identified some integration issues with the recent systems updates. Our team is working on it, Austin chimed in. I think it's a bandwidth bottleneck. We might need to migrate to a higher tier cloud infrastructure. I can get quotes from AWS and Azure. I laughed out loud in my empty apartment. Bandwidth bottleneck. The kid thought throwing money at cloud services would fix a problem he couldn't even diagnose. Nicole tried to sound competent. We're running diagnostics on all the core systems. Should have answers by end of day. They had no idea what they were looking at. Wednesday morning, the payroll system locked up completely. Nobody could submit timesheets. HR was getting calls from 200 employees asking when they'd get paid. The client portal went down. 3 major accounts sent formal notices about contract violations. That's when Trevor brought in outside help, a cybersecurity firm from DC, the kind of consultants who charge $500 an hour and show up in suits talking about threat vectors and penetration testing. They spent all day Wednesday and Thursday running scans, looking for malware, checking for security breaches. Friday morning, one of their contractors got close. Guy named Neil Harper, according to his login credentials. He ran a deep diagnostic trace on the CRM data pipeline and found something that didn't match Apex's documented architecture. A relay command buried in the transaction buffer. It had a name, Sentinel Proxy Root Log. Neil tried to access it. Sentinel blocked him immediately. Secure biometric credential required. Voice signature mismatch. I watched it happen in real time on my console. Neil was smart, smarter than Austin or Nicole. He tried a credential override, probably figured it was some old test module someone forgot to document. This time Sentinel gave him more information. Credential owner, C. Brennan. Status, archived. My name. Right there in the system logs. Proof that the infrastructure they depended on was tied to me. Neil tried one more time. Attempted a forced bypass using elevated permissions he probably shouldn't have had. That's when Sentinel made its move. Access anomaly detected. Unrecognized admin authority. Revoking permissions. Every credential Neil Harper had was deleted from Apex's network in less than 1 second. His login, his access tokens, his security clearances, everything. His screen went black, rebooted, and kicked him back to a login screen that no longer recognized his username. I could picture the chaos, Neil staring at his screen, confused, his manager asking what happened, someone from IT trying to restore his access and finding nothing. No record of his credentials, no backup, just empty space where his account used to be. The DC consultants probably billed Apex another $15,000 that day and accomplished exactly nothing. Thursday afternoon, my phone rang again. This time I recognized the number. Patricia Reeves, my attorney. I'd worked with her years ago on some patent documentation. Carter, got your email about the situation. I reviewed the documentation you sent. Do you have time to talk? Sure, I said. They're making noise about legal action, claiming you sabotaged their systems. I need you to send me everything you have. Blueprint originals, server registration docs, any emails or contracts that establish ownership of this Sentinel system. I've got it all, I said. Blueprints from 2016, signed and dated. Server hosting invoices under my LLC, the whole paper trail. Good. Send it tonight. I'll prepare a response. Carter, if what you're telling me is accurate, they don't have a leg to stand on. You can't sabotage your own property. That evening, I scanned every page of the yellow folder. The blueprints, the notes, the architecture diagrams, sent it all to Patricia along with the server registration documents and the email from Roland Ashford back in 2016 where he'd written, "Sentinel is your masterpiece, Carter. This company wouldn't exist without it." Friday morning, Patricia sent Apex's legal team a formal response, professional, calm, and backed up with documentation they couldn't dispute. The legal threats stopped immediately. But by then, Apex was already falling apart, and the board had scheduled an emergency investor meeting for that afternoon. One of those investors remembered me very well. The investor meeting happened Friday afternoon at 2 p.m. I wasn't there, obviously, but Sentinel's monitoring interface captured everything through that audit file Nicole had uploaded. 12 faces on the conference room screen. New York, London, Tokyo, San Francisco. Investors who'd poured millions into Apex over the years. Most of them just cared about returns and quarterly projections, but one of them was different. Trevor stood at the head of the table, trying to project confidence. His $3,000 suit looked a little less sharp today. 5 days of crisis management will do that. We're experiencing temporary infrastructure challenges, he started. Legacy systems that require modernization. We've brought in expert consultants and expect full resolution within the week. A few people nodded. Someone typed notes, then a voice cut through from the screen. Who owns Sentinel? Trevor blinked. I'm sorry, what? The system. Is it proprietary to Apex or contracted? Because its architecture doesn't match anything in our technology briefs. The name tag appeared on screen. Victor Rains, Senior Partner, Havenbrook Capital. The man whose Series A funding back in 2016 had kept Apex alive when they were burning through cash. Trevor shifted his weight. It was built internally. Legacy infrastructure maintained by our systems division. Victor leaned closer to his camera. That's not what I remember. I met with Carter Brennan in August 2022, Q3 partner lunch in Boston. We sat across from each other at Legal Seafood, and he walked me through a system schematic on a cocktail napkin. He paused. I kept that napkin. Still have it in my office. He called it the nervous system behind the noise. Said nobody sees it, but it keeps everything alive. And he signed it. C. Brennan, August 14th, 2022. The room went silent. Nicole's face on the screen had gone pale. Austin looked confused. Trevor opened his mouth, but nothing came out. So I'll ask again, Victor said. Who owns Sentinel? Someone else spoke up. A woman from the London office. Are we saying the core infrastructure isn't company property? Victor nodded slowly. I'm saying we need to clarify ownership, because if Carter Brennan built and maintains this system independently, and we just terminated his employment, we may have a significant operational problem. We have documentation, Trevor said quickly. All systems built during employment hours are company property under standard IP agreements. Show me the documentation, Victor said, because I'm looking at the technical architecture brief from 2017 and Sentinel isn't mentioned anywhere. Not in the systems inventory, not in the asset register, nothing. The meeting fell apart after that. People talking over each other, demanding answers Trevor couldn't give. Someone mentioned the legal letter they'd sent me. Someone else pointed out that threatening legal action against the person who built your infrastructure probably wasn't smart. The meeting ended 30 minutes early. No decisions made, no confidence restored, just panic. I sat in my apartment watching the log file update. Poured another maker's mark. This time I actually enjoyed it. My phone rang that evening. Number I didn't recognize. Massachusetts area code. Carter Brennan, I answered. Carter, this is Julia Ross. We met about 4 years ago when you consulted for my startup. We were in that shared office space in Cambridge. I remembered. Small logistics company, maybe 15 people, working on supply chain optimization for mid-size manufacturers. Julia was sharp, asked good questions, actually listened to answers. I remember, I said. How's the company doing? We're at 60 people now. Series B funding closed last month, and we need someone who knows how to build infrastructure that actually works. I heard what happened at Apex. I'm sorry it went down that way, but honestly, it's their loss. Appreciate that, I said. I'm calling because we need a CTO, someone who can build systems the right way from the ground up. No politics, no shortcuts, just solid architecture. You interested in talking? I looked around my apartment. Empty Maker's Mark glass, laptop showing Sentinel logs, the cardboard box still on my kitchen table with 20 years of my career inside. Yeah, I said. I'm interested. We met for coffee Monday morning at a place in Kendall Square. Julia brought her VP of engineering, a guy named Chris, who actually knew what he was talking about. We spent 2 hours going through their current setup, their growth projections, what they needed. Here's what I want, I said. Clear documentation on everything. Proper IP agreements that spell out exactly what the company owns and what I own. No ambiguity. And if I build something proprietary, we establish licensing terms up front. Absolutely, Julia said. That's exactly how we want to do it, and I want equity. 5% with standard vesting. She didn't hesitate. Done. When can you start? 2 weeks, I said. I need to close out some things. We shook hands. I walked out of that coffee shop with a job offer that paid $40,000 more than Apex had, plus equity in a company that actually had potential. Tuesday morning, I started rebuilding Sentinel. Took the core logic, everything I'd learned over 20 years, and created something new. Cleaner code, better architecture, modern security protocols. No legacy constraints, no hidden dependencies. We called it Sentinel Prime. This time it wouldn't live in shadows. It would be documented, owned properly, built right from day one, and everyone would know exactly who created it. My new team asked the right questions. How do we protect client data? What happens if traffic spikes 10x? How do we prevent single points of failure? Not how do we make it look good in a pitch deck? Not what buzzwords should we use? Just good engineering questions from people who cared about building things that worked. Meanwhile, Apex kept falling apart. The board had frozen Trevor's operating budget. 5 major clients pulled their contracts. Stock dropped 38% in 3 weeks. Tech journalists started writing articles about infrastructure collapse and management failures. Nicole took a 40% pay cut and got reassigned to some internal audit role nobody wanted. Austin Pierce quietly updated his LinkedIn to say he was exploring new opportunities. Last I heard, Trevor got forced out by the board with 0 severance. His father Roland had to come back and try to save what was left. Someone forwarded me an internal memo Roland sent. We lost the person who built this company's foundation. And for what? Pride? We deserve what we got. I didn't respond, didn't gloat, just kept building. 3 months after I started at Julia's company, Sentinel Prime went live with our 7th client, a manufacturing firm in Ohio, 200 employees moving $50 million in product annually. They'd been struggling with supply chain visibility for years. We got them operational in 6 weeks. I was in the office late on a Thursday when my phone buzzed. Brandon, Dad, you see this Forbes article? What article? I said. About you. The architect they couldn't erase. It's trending on LinkedIn. I pulled it up on my laptop. There it was. A 2,000-word piece about the Apex collapse, the Sentinel ownership dispute, and how I'd rebuilt the system at a new company. They'd interviewed Victor Rains. He'd told them about the napkin, the lunch in Boston, how he'd known from day one that I was the real architect behind Apex's success. The article quoted Roland Ashford too. We made a catastrophic error in judgment. Carter Brennan built our foundation, and we destroyed it because my son wanted to bring in his own team. That's not leadership. That's ego. Brandon texted again. They called me for a quote, said I could decline if I wanted. What did you tell them? I typed back. Told them my dad taught me to document everything and never build something you don't own. Reporter loved it. I smiled. 20 years old, and the kid already understood what took me decades to learn. Friday morning, Julia called me into her office. She had the Forbes article open on her screen. This is incredible press for us, she said. 3 potential clients reached out this morning asking about Sentinel Prime. One of them is a Fortune 500 company. Just doing the job, I said. No, Carter. You're doing more than that. You're building something that actually matters. The team respects you, clients trust you, and you're teaching everyone here how to do this right. She paused. We're accelerating your equity vest. You've earned it. That afternoon, I drove out to my dad's place in Natick. He'd passed 5 years ago, but I still had keys to the garage where he'd kept his 1967 Corvette. Cherry red, rebuilt engine, original interior. He'd bought it in 1985, worked on it every weekend for years. When money got tight after the divorce, when Brandon's college fund needed topping off, I'd sold that car, got $35,000 for it, enough to cover a semester and books. I'd found it listed online 2 weeks ago. Same car, same VIN. Guy in Worcester had bought it from the dealer I'd sold it to. He wanted $42,000. I wrote the check that afternoon. Saturday morning, I drove it home, parked it in my building's garage, covered it with the same tarp my dad had used, stood there for a minute just looking at it. My phone buzzed. Brandon again. Dad, can I come over? Want to talk about something? Sure, I said. Come by whenever. He showed up an hour later. We sat at my kitchen table, the same one that had held the cardboard box with 20 years of my career inside. That box was gone now. Everything filed properly, documented, stored where it belonged. I'm graduating in May, Brandon said. Been thinking about what's next. You've got options, I said. Your grades are solid. Any company would be lucky to have you. That's the thing, he said. I don't want just any company. I want to work somewhere that actually values what I build, somewhere that does things right. He paused. Think there's room at your company? I looked at my son. 20 years old, computer science degree almost finished, his whole career ahead of him. He could go anywhere. Big tech companies, startups with flashy perks, places that would pay him 6 figures right out of school. And he wanted to work with me. We've got a junior engineering position opening up in June, I said. You'd have to interview with the team. I'm not handing you anything. Wouldn't want you to, he said. I'll earn it. I know you will, I said. That evening, I sat on my balcony watching the sun set over Boston Harbor. The Apex building was visible in the distance, glass and chrome reflecting the orange light. From here, it still looked impressive. You couldn't see the half-empty parking lot or the darkened floors. My phone was quiet. No emergency calls, no system alerts, no voicemails from people who'd ignored me asking for help they didn't deserve. Just a text from Julia. Board approved the Fortune 500 contract. Biggest deal we've ever closed. Celebration Monday. And one from Brandon. Thanks for the talk, Dad. Means a lot. I thought about Trevor Ashford. 38 years old, handed a company he didn't build, surrounded by people who told him what he wanted to hear. He'd fired me because I represented the old way, the boring infrastructure nobody sees. He wanted innovation, disruption, fresh energy. What he got was a $200 million company collapsing because he didn't understand that foundations matter more than facades. I thought about Nicole Winters. 18 months of training, years of mentorship, one crucial mistake I'd covered for. And when it mattered, she couldn't even look me in the eye. Some people think loyalty is old-fashioned, that in business, you do what benefits you and move on. Maybe that's true for some industries, but in infrastructure, in systems, in the invisible work that keeps everything running, loyalty isn't about sentiment. It's about understanding that the person who built something knows where every wire runs, every fail-safe sits, every backup triggers. Fire that person, and you're not just losing an employee, you're losing the map. 52 years old, fired in front of 25 people on a Monday morning in April. By August, I was CTO of a company that actually deserved my work. By October, I'd rebuilt my life's work into something better. And my son wanted to learn from me, not because he had to, but because he chose to. Trevor thought he was cutting dead weight. Turns out, I was the only weight holding his company together. My phone buzzed one last time. Text from an unknown number. Mr. Brennan, this is MIT's Department of Engineering. We'd like to invite you to speak at our annual symposium on infrastructure security and intellectual property protection. Would you be interested? I looked out at the harbor. The sun had set completely now, city lights reflected on the water. Yeah, I typed back. I'd be interested. Because some systems fail, some companies collapse, some people learn too late what matters. But the right foundations, built by the right people, with the right integrity, those last forever. And the architects who build them? We don't disappear just because someone stops looking. We're still here, still building, still proving that experience, patience, and doing things right beats arrogance every single time. Trevor Ashford fired me because he thought I was expendable. He learned otherwise.